And to discuss with us the implications of this meeting on Brexit, as well as the longer-term future of ties between Britain and France, is Guy Bentley. Guy is a research associate at the Reason Foundation, a non-profit think tank. Welcome, Guy.
Thank you for having me.
So we saw quite the striking difference between the two leaders. Emmanuel Macron coming off a very decisive win, and he's very much a pro-EU leader, and then May losing her majority in Parliament, and especially this as Brexit negotiations are due to start. How much do you think this dynamic will shape future ties?
I think we haven't learnt too much about this recent meeting. Theresa May was comfortable in having a meeting with Emmanuel Macron that was focusing on counter-terrorism and security policy, which she generally sees as her strong suit. But the optics, I have to say, as everybody else in the press noted, were striking. You see a victorious French president heading for really a landslide in his parliamentary election, with a very weakened British Prime Minister about to go into a set of very difficult negotiations. The fundamentals of the Anglo-French relationship haven't changed, though. France is going to be seeking to play quite a hard game with the UK in terms of Brexit negotiations. France wants more of the European project, more integration, more unity in Europe, and can actually use Brexit to its advantage in several ways, especially with regards to the economy. So Theresa May, hoping to have that massive majority, which she didn't get, came up with quite a weak hand.
And to the point for those ties, what are really the key economic areas of cooperation between these two countries?
Well, the key areas of economic cooperation are embedded within the European single market, because, of course, France and Britain, still both being members of the European Union, have a whole host of ties, both in terms of financial services, agriculture, industrial products, goods and services, and so on. The main areas of trade between France and the UK are mainly in terms of industrial goods and agricultural goods, but they're still not each other's main markets. The European single market as a whole is Britain's largest export market. In terms of individual countries, France ranks around 4th or 5th, and vice versa is true with France. But the ties are very deep and embedded, and it's going to be very hard to disentangle those ties in the years ahead, creating all this uncertainty we're seeing in the business community.
And especially speaking of the business community, we know that France has kind of been trying to lure some of these financial companies away from the hub of London as they see this uncertainty with Brexit. Could this end up becoming a much more competitive relationship, you think?
It's very interesting. France, and Emmanuel Macron in particular, has gone to London and even tried to persuade many French people who have moved to London to move back to Paris, saying France is going to have a much more business-friendly environment. All those high taxes you see under François Hollande may not apply. The UK is exiting the European Union, probably the European single market, that France could be the great champion of financial services. I'm afraid for a lot of the financial services community in London, that won't quite wash. London is still really the financial capital of Europe, and even with all this pro-business rhetoric, there isn't really much of a chance of Paris displacing London as Europe's main financial centre anytime soon.
Now let's also look at this idea of Brexit and this idea of the door being either open or shut. We saw that German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble said the door would be open to remain in the UK if the UK changed its mind. We saw Theresa May dismiss that at that press conference. Not quite as strong of a dismissal from Macron, though. Is the door closed on Brexit?
I'm afraid for those who wish Britain to remain in the European Union, the door really is closed on Brexit. The only thing that really needs discussion is what type of Brexit we're going to get. Article 50 has already been triggered, and Article 50, which was never actually even meant to be triggered, nobody really envisioned anybody going out of the European Union, there isn't any legal mechanism we can see at the moment for reversing that situation. So either the UK comes out of the European Union with some sort of deal in place, or it crashes out with no deal. And the terms of those deals will have to be negotiated in a very short space of time. So it's a bit mischievous for people to say that the door isn't fully closed. I'm afraid for Brexit, the door really is closed.
Now, one area that we did see at least some common ground was this idea of trying to work on counter-terror measures, obviously with the attacks in both countries in recent months. Now, they did target these online and social media companies and really cracking down on them as a way to combat extremism. What are some of the challenges that might raise?
I think there are huge challenges here, not least that many of these companies that Theresa May and President Macron are talking about are US companies operating in an entirely separate legal realm where things such as the First Amendment and free speech are really major issues. Specific laws specifically on hate speech, incitement to racial or religious hatred that exists, say, in France and the UK, do not exist in the US. We're going to see a real clash between two different visions of what the internet can be and whether populations will accept a greater, stricter regulation of the internet in European countries as opposed to the US.
Right.
We're really setting ourselves up here for a battle between civil libertarians and governments seeking to clamp down on hateful and terrorist speech.
Certainly a lot of uncertain ground in all aspects. Thank you so much, Guy Bentley, Research Associate at the Reason Foundation.